Another game in the books. Getting ready to put another show in the books. Appreciate everybody for checking me out tonight. This is the final buzzer with DeShaun Tate. Typically do this every night, 15 minutes after the NBA games conclude. So I do appreciate everybody for checking me out. Also, speaking of checking out, be sure to subscribe. Anywhere you find your favorite podcast, that being iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Red Circle, the whole nine. Streaming live as well, where you can subscribe on YouTube, that being at Tate's Take. Also on social media at Tate's Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS, and you know that's where basketball lives. I like to call it the most entertaining, most informational, and the most educational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. Let's scoot this back a little bit because that's a little bit too close. Now, with that being said, also make sure when I spoke about social media, on the IG, Instagram, again, at Tate's Take Hoops. Now, I want to get into a little bit of what we saw take place on tonight, where the Los Angeles Lakers, number 1 seed in the West, took down the number 3 seed in the West, the Denver Nuggets, 105-103 in game 2. Now the Lakers hold the lead for the series 2-0. Let's start out with Denver first. I like to go with our winners first typically, but we're going to switch it up a little bit here on tonight. So let's start out with the losers, this being a Denver team that I believe really needed to remind themselves that they're here for a reason. You know, I feel like if they were able to keep it close, then they're putting themselves in a position where they have a chance to win, which is ideal, which is something that, you know, they obviously something that they obviously want to do. However, just getting behind similar to the way that they did in game 1 just clearly wasn't enough. And they needed to pull off some antics like the way that they did tonight in order to have a realistic chance at taking down this team, knowing that it was a game that they needed. But more than anything, I think their biggest problem a lot of times is defensively. Played a lot better defensively tonight than they have in many games throughout the course of the playoffs, to try to avoid and prevent LeBron James and the Lakers from getting in downhill situations, as well as into transition. I think that that's just some of the main points, and they did a better job at that, specifically in the second half. First half was just not really much of anything really going their way. However, I wanted to know how much Michael Porter Jr. would penetrate, because it's far too often that he's standing over in the corner. I call it playing light skin ball. I call it playing just limiting himself far too often, you know, and that's something that he can't afford to do, because essentially what's happening is Denver puts themselves in a position when that happens that it's like 5-on-4 basketball. But he was different tonight. He drove to the lane. He was even a little bit more aggressive and more physical defensively in transition. We've seen it when LeBron pretty much, you know, probably got over 100 pounds on this dude, and at least he went up and contested. And that's something that clearly he was going to have to do, or he was going to be sitting right beside Mike Malone for an extensive amount of time, because of the fact that he had just turned the ball over. So I did like some of the things that I saw from him tonight. But I see where a lot of his frustration grows from a lot of the time, specifically in the post-game press conference from the last series, when they were playing against the Clippers, in terms of moving the ball around and giving some guys different opportunities to get the ball and score the basketball, because they have far too many scorers on their team. I mean, think about it. They score, and I get it, it's playoff basketball, and, you know, the pace and the flow of the game changes a lot, slows down. You start finding yourself into more half-court sets and half-court offenses and so forth. And so I do get it, but they have to find a way to speed up the Lakers just a little bit. And I get it. Lakers are also good in transition offensively and defensively, but you have to test the Lakers defensively in transition and put the ball in the hole before they can get back and set up their defense. And you got all those bigs. Like when you got a lot of bigs like the way that the Lakers have, this is something I don't think that the Denver Nuggets was executing on enough, especially and specifically within the first half, where you got to get those bigs. If you're not going to get them into foul trouble, you're going to be taking a lot of long shots from outside and not penetrating to the basket nearly as much. Then you got to put these guys in position to where you're forcing them to just constantly do this, running up and down the floor all day long and using what they call their advantage in terms of size to a disadvantage on the defensive end. So that's just something that I saw within that. But he's the third leading scorer, talking about MPJ on this team. And if they want to get some things going, it's not just him, but it's some others. Gary Harris, after coming in, we know that he was going to be a little bit sluggish because he hadn't been playing ball in a minute, and then came in and gave some contribution over the course of the last few games. And then the last couple, he hasn't necessarily done as well. So that's where Michael Porter Jr., even though he's inexperienced, you going up there in the presser and you're calling guys out and so forth. You got to make sure you're doing your part. So credit to him, because I really felt like even if he didn't have the best statistical night, he definitely put forth quite a bit of effort in his own right. And some of just the adjustments that Denver made, they had more crisp passes. I guess the passes were much more crisper, if that's even a such word. And their confidence offensively was much better and improved. I don't know if, what we saw in game one in terms of them looking sluggish and just kind of like looking out of sync to an extent, really came from them, coming straight off of playing a 7-game series, and then the turnaround to that in just a couple nights probably didn't help them very much. And they didn't really have a whole lot to go off of on the Lakers, with the exception of playing them in the regular season, which I get it. That's a big time help. But the Lakers in the regular season is different than the Lakers in the playoffs. So I just think that, that's one of those things where efficiency plays a part on the offensive end, and they needed to take it to another level. And that's just something that Denver did. Now, something that they didn't do in the first half, which I really feel like is in some cases a testament to the Lakers, but Denver can't afford any more slow starts. Like, this is a team with Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and for what it's worth, guys who are experienced, maybe not the most talented guys, but guys like Dwight Howard, guys like Rajon Rondo, who's a champion with the Boston Celtics and been to the finals. Dwight Howard been to the finals. JaVale McGee has championships. So they don't just have big guys. They don't just have rim runners. They have not just guys with size, but they have guys that are experienced and knows what it takes to get to the next level, where Denver doesn't necessarily have that. And I think that a lot of that definitely showed on tonight, but they needed their defense to improve. We didn't see that on the Denver as a team. The whole makeup of their team is just not defensive minded. But if you give it to them, they'll take it. But they're going to come out on the offensive end and try and expose you with their offensive firepower, which is something that they're good at. And some teams are just that. I always make this reference to, Pac-12 and Big 12 football, is that they're about scoring points. That's what Denver is about, with the exception of just a couple guys, specifically Gary Harris and maybe, Jeremy Grant and a few other guys. But for the most part, they're an offensive led team, and they dug a hole too deep for themselves in the first half. And this was one that they needed, and this is one that they had in the bag. But LA is well aware of what type of team Denver can be, and they just found out firsthand. And I give the Lakers some credit, and a lot of people are gonna talk bad about the Lakers, and I think that there are some reasons to be a little bit concerned to an extent when it comes to being punched in the mouth, because of the simple fact that when you're talking about the Lakers being up on a team that much, it kind of looks like that they got off the gas a little bit, took their foot off the gas a little bit. And especially considering the fact that they're well aware of what Denver is capable of. We've seen Denver do it, come back 3-1 against Utah. We've seen Denver do it again, come back 3-1 versus the Clippers. And you don't want to be putting yourself in that situation where you're like the Clippers, you're coming in arrogant. You took care of business in game one, and it really wasn't much of a fight that you put up, and you got Denver's best players in foul trouble and so forth. But you're well aware as to exactly what it is that they are capable of in terms of Denver. And so, but they fought back. They punched back, talking about the Lakers. They could have easily thrown in the towel or easily just said, we got discombobulated, similar to those other teams, specifically being the Los Angeles Clippers, but they didn't do that. So that's where you have to give them some credit. But this wasn't expected necessarily from the Lakers, especially after having the big lead that we saw the Clippers have on Denver as well. So I want to make sure I throw that part out there, because that's a little bit of credit to both sides in terms of both teams. That defense has the defense needs to improve. It improved in the second half, but that's not something that's really in their arsenal. And to give them the benefit of the doubt, they were +3 in terms of the steals category tonight. So that definitely helped them out a whole lot and give them some confidence going into game 3, because we know that they're not just going to be a team that say, we down 2-0. A lot of people not giving us a chance, probably going to get swept. We gave it a good fight or whatever, what have you. Even if they go down 3-0, I really believe that they're a team that's going to continue to try and fight back and fight hard and put forth that extra effort as much as they possibly can to try and get a win in there somehow. And that's all you need clearly with this Denver team, is one win to give them enough confidence to try and push through. Now, do I think they'll win the series? Absolutely not. But I do believe that that's something that's essentially kind of like all that they need. My question to the people out there, and feel free to kind of chime in. As you know, you can always feel free to comment below with questions and or opinions, as a couple people have already done so far. My dude D Boyd is consistent and persistent, man, with coming on this thing. So I got 2 different comments, but one of them being from my dude D Boyd, man, saying great defense by Jokic on the switch, but better offense by AD, talking about that last second play. And I think that was great. I don't know what Miles Plumlee was doing. All that length, all that athleticism, and you have the chance to go out there and save the day and get a win. And I don't think it's all his fault, but you have to know better, your experience. If we're not talking about Michael Porter Jr. here, we're talking about a guy who's been in this situation and has playoff experience with this particular organization, this particular franchise. So there's no excuses from him, but he's not the only reason behind what happened. Anthony Davis in his post-game press conference comments basically saying, I want to prove that even though I'm oftentimes not the most aggressive guy, I definitely want to show that I am one that is not afraid of the bright lights and to take those last shots. And it was clear that this was a play that was supposed to be ran for LeBron James, and obviously things didn't work out that way, and that's when you need another guy to step up. Now, the big question is, what happens if you find yourself in another situation, which you probably won't, at least not in this series anyways, but you never know, where you don't have that option for Anthony Davis and you don't have that option for LeBron James. Where does the ball go? Because we all know that there's no third scorer that is consistent on this team. But that wasn't the case tonight, and give Anthony Davis credit for going out there and doing what he was supposed to do, why he gets paid all that big money, and behind why he is a first team All NBA this year. Also, Billy Parks, Billy P, BP, what's popping, man, coming through on the Facebook where we stream live, obviously, saying that Jokic and AD are 2 of the most entertaining big men ever. And that, we got to give credit. I don't think that Anthony Davis is necessarily the most entertaining, and respectfully disagreeing in that own right. Not saying that he's a bad player, obviously, but that shot was very entertaining, and Jokic is just the definition of entertaining to me, because a lot of people are always going to feel like, well, Nikola Jokic is, this slow slug or, sloth type, where there's not really a lot of like lateral movement. He's not very fast, but with his vision, his IQ, his passing ability, that within itself is enough for me. And even more so because of the fact that he's not really this super athletic dude. So appreciate Billy P for checking in with us as well. And you can always check in with us again, streaming live on Facebook as well as YouTube. So make sure you tell a friend, tell your family, tell an enemy, tell your mama, tell your grandmama, tell everybody. And now we're gonna get back to the meat and potatoes of the recap. Again, y'all know I like to do this about 15 minutes after every playoff game. So I appreciate everybody that's joining us, as well as on the IG platform as well. But my question I wanted to propose is there anything that Denver can realistically do to derail the Lakers, considering their all-stars and the stars on the team and their, the Lakers experience and championship pedigree. And, you go in their arena and look up in the rafters, it looks totally different than the way it does at what is it, the Pepsi Center or yeah, I think the Pepsi Center or wherever they play at Fifth Third Bank, somewhere right around that range. But that being said, it looks different. So they're going to have a different kind of pedigree, a different type of tradition to themselves. And with that comes a huge, what's the word I'm looking for here? Disadvantage to an extent. But I think a lot of that disadvantage is strictly mental, if I'm just being honest. And how many of you really even believe that Denver is going to win a game? I mean, most people would say, probably, I think it would be 50-50 between the people that feel like, Denver will win one game. The other 50 saying Denver will, it's probably not 50-50. I think from the people that I've spoken with, and I'd love to hear from you guys, most people are saying that it's probably about 45-45-10. 45% saying that, Denver will win a game, 45% saying that Denver will win 2 games, and the other little 10% saying that Denver will get swept, which I think is a lot bigger possibility than some people think. And I know that Denver appears to really be like that, especially after tonight. But I'm curious to know what some of you may think. Feel free to hit me up on the social at Tate's Take Hoops, at TATESTAKEHOOPS. But I do want to hear from you on that. And I also want to know, was this Denver's chance? If they wanted to win a game, if they wanted to take it to 7, these are the games that are going to be looked back upon to say, I don't know, bro. Like, that's really the one that they needed, And I want to know from you, is this the one they needed? Because this is the one that they had in the bag. You can't afford to get behind double digits and so forth all the time, because it happened in games where they were playing Utah and they came back and won. It happened in games where they were playing the Clippers. They came back and won. You're not going to surprise anybody every single time. And the Lakers gave them that opportunity, and they failed to come through. And give some credit to Jokic, man, because after that first game, it appears that he was really getting banged up by much more physical, stronger, athletic guys, Dwight Howards and JaVale McGee's and, Marquise Morris and all these different guys. And it took him out of the games in some occasions mentally. But tonight, that didn't happen. And I thought that we were going back down that road again, despite the fact that he wasn't necessarily in foul trouble at the time. And he did what he was supposed to do. He went in there and he didn't give up, and knowing that he was at a disadvantage from an athletic standpoint and so on and so forth. But he went in there and continued to try and kill guys with his IQ and his kind of like finesse type of game. So I definitely want to make sure I give him some credit. And then another guy who kind of somewhat has earned himself a little bit more playing time and opportunity to see the floor extensively, maybe, but then in some cases not. And that would be PJ Dozier, a guy from, South Carolina, actually helped lead that team to a Final Four a few years ago, back in, I think, 2017, and then saw the floor tonight and looked really, really good on occasions until they went, to the charity stripe, and it was time to shoot some free throws. And that's something that he has to be better at, and your expectations of him coming in and doing that. I mean, I get it. Granted, they're free. Those are free space on what I call the Tate's Take bingo card. But that didn't happen. He didn't do that. He didn't sink them, but he played well defensively and on offense, picked up a couple baskets that most people wouldn't have expected coming into this game. And even on the defensive end, took a charge once or twice and played pretty good and got out on the break, and everything else looked good. So if he wrap up them free throws, then I think that he can find a way to find the floor just a little bit more. The bench points. I think these 3 particular categories, I think, was very key in the Lakers winning. Between the bench points, the free throw shooting, and the turnovers. In terms of the bench points, Denver's bench outscored the Lakers by 11. Now, you might think that that's not a lot, but 32 bench points for Denver is exactly about where they should be and what I expected because of the offensive firepower that I was talking about earlier. Now, where it comes to the free throw percentages with the Lakers, I'm not saying that Denver shot the ball from the stripe terribly, because I think it was somewhere right around 72, 73%, somewhere right up in that range, which is not absolutely ridiculous. However, I've seen better. And when I saw better, that was tonight. Why? Because I think the Lakers shot better than them by nearly like 20%. I think it was like 90 something percent or somewhere right up in that range, or definitely an extra 13% for sure. No questions asked. And I think that that's where the difference maker was, because when you're Denver and you're a smaller team and you're trying to beat somebody by out hustling them, getting to the basket, forcing some of those Lakers bigs and foul trouble so that you can get to the cup. And you got to be able to knock those free ones down. And not to say that they didn't, but they could have did better. The Lakers did it a little bit better tonight, even though they got those bigs. And if you're Denver, you have to capitalize on that a little bit more. And then the turnovers. I get it. The Lakers, 23 turnovers. So you do have to definitely credit Denver's defense more than what we've seen in the past. I don't think defense necessarily got them there or to this point, but they've been able to do it in spurts. They can't wait until the second half to decide that that's when they want to decide to play basketball. With that said, they forced 23 Lakers turnovers. The problem is that Denver had 19 themselves. So while it is a big problem for the Lakers, that's not going to happen on a consistent basis all the time, especially when you have the ball in Rajon Rondo's hands as much as it requires. And then even in LeBron's hands, who's been 17 years in this league. And is a primary ball handler for this team as well. But if you're Denver, you can't cough it up 19 times. You got all those bigs who are not, big. The takeaways are not nearly as much. A lot of those were unforced turnovers and so forth. So from that standpoint, I get it if we're talking about block shots, but just unforced errors and things like that, I don't think that's something that's really helping Denver try and put themselves in a position to go to the NBA Finals. So I'm not sure how much that would be able to help. Now, as far as the Lakers go, want to try and get through this relatively quickly. I always think about, when I think about LeBron James, I always think about the aggressive LeBron versus the passive LeBron. And sometimes I think that it's not that he's bad when he's aggressive. It's not that he's bad when he's passive. But I think what we're seeing here out of LeBron is that there's times and occasions where he decides to be one versus the other at the wrong time. Tonight, it paid off for him because that last shot was designed and set up to be for him. He penetrates to the goal. He sees that the defense collapsed. I think he swings it out to like a KCP or somebody who swings it out to like Caruso. And then obviously that sets up the big shot for AD at the end. However, if AD doesn't hit that shot and Denver wins this game, everybody's going to be killing LeBron James for that, for being passive. Now, of course, he's going to get all the praise and not going to get very much praise in this case for different reasons. But, people, and it's probably for unfair reasons too. People praise Michael Jordan for taking the last shot, deservedly so, because he was knocking them down. But people also praise Michael Jordan because he was able to find his players in positions where he knew their strengths, he knew their weaknesses, and their strengths, like Steve Kerr, like John Paxson, and so many other guys, was out on the perimeter. He found those guys, and those guys made plays, similar to what LeBron did today. However, it just seems like it's a lose-lose for LeBron all the time. And I hate that sometimes, but that's what comes along with being a star player. But that's just something that just kind of caught my eye. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of threw that out there at you guys to maybe pay attention to when you're going back and listening to this recap tomorrow morning. If you got to be up early because you had to put the kids to bed tonight early and get, packing lunches and getting dinner started and putting the kids into bed and getting them ready for virtual learning in the morning and all this other type of stuff. this is something that you can kind of go back when you go back. Hopefully you DVR the game or going to be able to watch the replay, that it'll be able to make sense. You can just kind of tie it all together like a pretzel. Something else in regards to LA. How are you grading Rajon Rondo? This team has looked significantly different. I've said it time and time again ever since he kind of came back from a defensive and an offensive standpoint, and he's really stuck out and hit some big time shots in some clutch moments when they really, really needed him. And so I definitely want to give him some credit. But how do you rate him coming back? I think I would rate Rajon Rondo right now. If A+ is perfect, I think I'll give him a solid A. Like Rajon Rondo, when you start talking about the top 5, top 10, hell, even top 20 point guards in this league, nobody's really going to name Rajon Rondo, but I always feel like that he's definitely one that's in the top 20 because of the fact that he does what a point guard is supposed to do. Not a combo guard, I'm not talking about the Donovan Mitchells and the the James Hardens or Russell Westbrooks or Dame Dollars or none of those type dudes. I'm talking about pure traditional prototypical point guards in this league. I definitely think that Rajon Rondo is in the top 20 when we're talking point guards, not combos, not CGs, but PGs. So that's what I would rate him. I would rate him an A. And I think that the beauty of Rajon Rondo, appreciate you, my cuz Will Scales, as you see me over here looking over to the side quite a bit, always paying attention to where we're streaming as well on the IG at Tate's Take Hoops. But, him going off and saying that Rondo is a top 10 point guard. And I think that he can be in that conversation. Is he like cut and dry top 10? No, probably not. But considering the fact that he's not a point guard that's great at shooting, and that's something we all know, but the dude can run a team. The dude has been able to step up and hit clutch baskets in moments. I mean, think about how hard it is to come from, come into the league, not be a great shooter, playing with all the guys that you play with on that championship Boston team between KG and Ray Allen and who am I missing? Paul Pierce, who that's a whole nother conversation I'm not the biggest fan of, but him playing his role. And then after that, he had so many different stints in different places, in New Orleans, in Sacramento, and all these other teams that he played for, and then have just kind of been like an afterthought, essentially. Now he finds his way on this Lakers team and is doing exactly what is needed to do. Take the ball out of LeBron James' hands, give him an opportunity to set up, because LeBron needs to be able to be a scorer for this team, but also we know that he can be a playmaker as well. But less is more in this case. You put Rajon Rondo in a situation like that, and he excels. And I think he's been inarguably underrated and underappreciated when you start thinking about exactly why this team is successful the way that it is, because of the fact that you have two big superstars in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So I want to give him a little bit of credit for that. Now, KCP finally contributing. He had a good game 1. He had a pretty good game 2 where he knocked down some big time shots, specifically in the first half. So any little bit of KCP offense, I think, is pretty much a bonus. I don't think he's a terrible player, but he just has not panned out very well with the Lakers so far. And it's good to see him be able to contribute and bring some production over the course of the last few nights. Because there was a lot of people on his head, and deservedly so. He's there to be a scorer, essentially, and maybe not necessarily the lead scorer, anything crazy like that, or third or fourth option on his team. But when you get the ball in positions to where you can excel and capitalize, we expect for you to do that over here. And if you ain't doing that, then people are going to come for your head. And he hadn't been doing that, but give him some credit for a game and a half, for being able to bring something to the table and do that. I mean, he's getting paid enough money to do that. One of the big pieces and keys that I also saw within this game is the fact that Dwight Howard, his approach, his presence has been outstanding. I was curious to know if he can duplicate what we saw out of him in game 1, and much of it he did. Now, maybe not every single play, but he has definitely been a huge piece of what the Lakers have been able to do with trying to win this series. And he didn't play a whole lot, in the Houston series at all, really. And then you start talking about what he's been able to do and just needing you just like that. Like so many people talk, oh, I can do this, I can do that. But when you're not relied upon in situations, and then all of a sudden it's like coming up this next series, we gonna need you. And not just for a little bit, but for a lot of bit. You're expected to come in and contribute. And he's been doing that. He's not the same Dwight Howard, but he was looking like the old Dwight Howard, the Orlando Dwight Howard in some of these cases. Now, I think a lot of the contribution that he has been able to bring specifically within this series is because Dwight is that big, muscular, big, broad shoulders, physical. I think he's trying to punk Jokic, essentially, from what you see throughout this game and throughout this series. And Jokic wasn't having it tonight, but he was having it tonight in the first half because Dwight was just throwing him around and doing everything to him that he wanted to. You could see him after a made basket or after a hustle play, going back down the court and just kind of shoving Jokic a little bit. That's more so just trying to get into Jokic's mind because Dwight knows that the Lakers don't need him nearly as much as Denver needs Jokic, if any of that kind of makes some sense. So he was looking like vintage back in the day, late 2000s Dwight Howard. So I'll definitely want to give him some credit. And Jokic in Denver's front court was helping Dwight look like that a lot of the times. Jokic was physically outmatched until we got to a point where, and this is my issue a little bit with Dwight Howard in terms of this game, is that he literally went from like this humbling teammate that basically / ring chaser, at least that look, it had that look, that feel, that energy, that vibe to it, that's what he was trying to go after. And now he's been in a position where I think some of his antics was just a little bit too much, getting a technical foul and some of those other things where I think he's just kind of getting caught up in the moment sometimes. And now it's starting to kind of look like a distraction a little bit, maybe not a lot, but a little bit. That's just kind of what I saw from him. And they don't need that particularly for this team. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? And his energy, frustrated Denver and Jokic a lot. His energy was just, it was crazy. And just his ability to talk guys out of the game. His experience makes a big difference as well, because that's not something that Jokic has. But that looked a lot different in the second half, where Jokic began to frustrate Dwight Howard a little bit. So I think that, it all kind of started to look, originate back into the hands favorable for the Denver Nuggets at that point. How about Alex Caruso? When we start talking about key players, I see somebody over here on the IG, Chill Will, saying that leave Caruso open and his lights out. And Caruso can get up in there and he'll slam one on you if you don't think that, he's capable of doing that. I heard in the post-game press conference by who I think it was, Anthony Davis, who essentially said that, he's the scrappiest player on our team. And I think that that's clear. And that's something that you have to have. That's something that you need when you're talking about championship teams. You have to have somebody that's going to be willing to go out there and sacrifice their body, lay it all out on the line, overstand their roles, and do all the little things. Every championship team has that. I don't know if that's a Dennis Rodman. I don't know if that's a Draymond Green. I don't know, but whoever that player is for those individual teams, they always have one. Clearly, Alex Caruso is one of them for the Los Angeles Lakers, saying that he's the scrappiest on this entire team. So congrats to him in terms of the contribution that he was able to bring on tonight as well. I'm still trying to figure out, when we talk about the third, who the consistent guy is as far as the Lakers, we start talking about third leading scorer. who the third scorer is on this team. If LeBron's having a bad night and AD's in foul trouble or whatever, what have you, who's the guy that's going to put this team on their back? We still don't know who that, and it's okay to have whoever that guy is, the guy that has the hot hand for that night. I don't know if that guy is Rajon Rondo, Alex Caruso. Most people are going to say that guy either is A or B, should be Kyle Kuzma. But I feel like he's missing something. I'm not sure what he's missing. Maybe you guys can chime in with me a little bit. A couple guys have already chimed in. Let's see what they're talking about because, as you know, you can always feel free to go and do that. I like to give the people here an option to be able to have a voice and a platform to where they can talk a little bit too. How about this? Myron Gilmore, what's up, cuz? He said, look, let's go hoop low, cuz me and you one-on-one. Hey, you don't want that smoke, boy. You don't want that, cuz. We could do a little something. I had to come see about you. I'll play for some chicken wings, though. All flats, extra crispy, medium lemon pepper. So we got the lemon pepper. Okay, then we got the medium, but we got the medium sauce, and you toss them boys together. We could do it like that and put a couple cold beverages on it, too. Oh, wow. Okay. I don't know if this is a new listener at all, but somebody subscribed, and I'm overly grateful, thankful, and appreciative for you to be able to do this. Streaming live on YouTube, coming in from YouTube, saying Lakers with the win. Okay, we know that. That's a fact. Saying AD is the GOAT. How do I respond to this? Let me preface it first by saying this. Thank you for coming through on the show. I appreciate that. I appreciate you for subscribing and coming through and showing some love. I did hear AD earlier in the post game talking to the guys from TNT. Who is it? Shaq, Ernie, Kenny, Charles, and so forth. He said that they call Alex Caruso the GOAT. Now I know that that's something that's a little different entity as to why they call him that. Oh, and a pretty little finger roll, George Gervin with the pearl style. I did see that too by Caruso, but I respectfully disagree with the comment saying that AD is the GOAT. I think that's the best way that I can put that. I'm not sure that AD believes that he is the GOAT. AD probably thinks that the GOAT himself, even being, no, I wouldn't go that far as saying that he think LeBron is the GOAT. Because they're teammates, he probably would say LeBron is the GOAT. He definitely wouldn't say himself is the GOAT. But he is from Chicago, so I like to think that he would probably say Mike is the GOAT. Who is the GOAT? We'll just leave it at I respectfully disagree. However, 002 Kumix. Okay, Kumix, my bad. Appreciate you for chiming in, bro. Chime in more often, man. I love to get into some of these conversations with you so we can rap a little bit more. Oh, my dude, EP, Eddie Powell with the Hawks beat. Go and check him out on the social as well. Coming through and saying if the Lakers role players make shots, the Lakers are a completely different team. KCP and Danny Green are key to the Lakers' success. And that's another dude who I just haven't seen nearly enough of. Don't laugh at that, cuz. That I haven't nearly seen enough of in terms of like, he's a sniper. He's a one-dimensional player, and that's okay because the league always needs shooters, and there's nothing wrong with being a shooter and just a shooter. The problem that I have with Danny Green is he ain't been shooting nothing. Like, I ain't been seeing nothing from DG, and ball handling skills is suspect, and I get it. That's not necessarily what you need him to do, but bro, like, I need to see a little bit more out of you. Like, I really do. And that goes for KCP too. So I appreciate EP. Check him out at Hawks Beat, who does a phenomenal job covering the Hawks as well. But those are just, and I appreciate y'all for coming through and showing some love and bringing some comments out there. But when I was talking about Kyle Kuzma, he's missing something. Maybe y'all know. Hit me up on the social at Tate's Take Hoops, TATES TAKEHOOPS. And let me know what you think Kuzma is missing, because he's missing something. I don't know what that is. And was it even a good idea to keep him and get rid of Brandon Ingram, a guy who is now the most improved player in the league, averaging somewhere right around close to 30, inching closer to that, ironically enough, after you got rid of him. he started doing that and keeping Kuzma. It's just not looking like a good look. And I love the light-skinned homies to death. That's just what it is. Love them to death, especially if they come from my neck of the woods in the Great Lakes state of Michigan. The homie's a Flint product, a Flintstone. However, Cuz just ain't getting it done consistently nearly enough for me. And Brandon Ingram is looking like the guy at this point. So just a little bit of thoughts on that particular offseason acquisition from last year. I asked myself during this game if the Lakers ever felt threatened. And I think that would have been a good question. Like, as a reporter, I feel like that would have been a good question to ask if I was in the post-game presser tonight. Like, did the Lakers did y'all feel threatened? With an honest answer, not that BS media answer. Like, they're a good team and we knew what they were capable of. We've seen it happen against the Jazz and against the Clippers. And, we knew what they were capable of. And, we got a couple little I's that still need dotted and T's that still need crossed, and they're a good team and they do a good job. They're well coached by Mike Malone, all that. Get that out of here. Did you feel threatened at any point in this game? Because when you blowing leads the way that they were tonight, that's just not a good look, especially if you got what they call their GOAT in LeBron James. Remember, we're talking about GOAT conversations that I'm not necessarily having, but that I'm hearing people say. I'm not sure if I would have seen Mike get up by like close to 20 and then drop, you know what I mean? And get to a point where it's seconds left in the game and now you're on the losing end. I might need my memory refreshed a little bit, but especially against a team like Denver, I'm just not sure. That's that passive LeBron that I'm talking about, that I just sometimes not sure. I'm not feeling that part, and I think that that's some of the issue that I do have. Not a LeBron lover, not a LeBron hater. I'm completely neutral. I'm just telling you what I see with the eyeballs. And so from that standpoint, I think that they were threatened on tonight. I don't think that they were scared. I'm not sure that I really felt like they thought they were going to lose, but I think that they definitely felt threatened and challenged. Credit to AD, who scored the last 10 points. We know it's a make or miss league. We hear that all the time. It's very cliche, but it's a make or miss league. Scored the last 10 points for the team. I know at one point Jokic went for like 11 straight. For everybody that say that the big men game ain't really like it's completely extinct at this point, it didn't look that way in the winding moments in crunch time on tonight. So I think that's gonna be it, man, for tonight, man. I appreciate everybody on IG that peeped it out. Who all done peeped out this thing, man, as I'm picking up my phone. The homie Will Scales, man. Appreciate you for checking in on live tonight. E Free, Eric Freeman. Appreciate you much. Art _Betty's _boy. Art Betty's boy. Don't know who you are, but I do appreciate you for checking it out tonight. McGinnis J checked in as well. Red Cup College Basketball. Dinner Hour checked in. JL Rucker TV. Standout Kid, what up though? Mo, my cousin Mo, of course. Will Scales peeped it as well. My bro Horace peeped in as well. DT, appreciate you for showing some love. Ellie, man, my bro, what up though? Boxing expert Antoine Williams, check him out at Boxing Expert 33. The dude is a walking boxing brain. So make sure that you go and check him out. Goat Boxing Promotions is what he's representing. He always does a very good job doing that as well. Oh, my dude Max Van Auken. I think it's Auken. Appreciate you for checking it out. And then as far as the homies over here, because I always got to show some love to my people that show love to me. 002 Kumix. Appreciate you for checking in. EP, Eddie Powell, Myron Gilmore, cuz appreciate you per usual. D Boyd and BP, Billy Park. So in conclusion, appreciate you all for checking it out. We'll be doing this again. What will likely be, let me see, there's no games tomorrow. So I think games pick back up on Tuesday and Wednesday. You guys know that we recap. This is the final buzzer with DeShaun Tate every 15 minutes or so. after the playoff games conclude. Appreciate everybody for the love and spreading the word. Tell your mama, tell your grandmama, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies about the best, the most entertaining, the most informational, and the most educational podcast, basketball content in the form of a podcast that you can find anywhere that you find your favorite podcast, that being iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Red Circle, Stitcher, as well as streaming live on Instagram and YouTube at Tate's Take Hoops, TATES TAKEHOOPS hashtag. And don't you dare forget it, where basketball lives. In a minute.